welcome to Hell with Ohio State, the DGD podcast. As always, the NCDGD himself, Robert Reynolds, got Mr. Juan Daniels is back in the building, and got our man Brennan from the Mizzodcast as we talk about and gain insight about the enemy known as Missouri. Obviously, we're welcoming you with open arms, Brendan. So welcome to the show. And with that being said, the show is brought to you by our friends over at Alumni Hall. 10 minutes from campus. Keep that in mind. Or online, go check them out, alumnihall.com. Listen, you see this polo, got it straight from Alumni Hall. Excellent decision. Can't be beat. Juan, you've got some stuff from Alumni Hall too. Listen, I'm just saying it's very, very good stuff. Listen, and it's all licensed. All right, Nike, Cutter Buck, you name it, Columbia, you name it, they got it. alumnihall.com or in store at Athens at 10 minutes from campus. Give them a shout. Let them know the DGD podcast sent you, by the way. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into this. Juan, it's been a minute since you've been on, and there was something that had me scratching my head a little bit. We talked about it briefly, right? I did on one of the past shows, but I want to get your thoughts on what Shannon Sharpe said about Kirby Smart. To paraphrase, if you will, basically trashing Kirby for not giving a damn about the players, right? Basically just giving a damn about it for 3 to 4 years, and then not giving a shit about it. I found it to be a bunch of bullshit, in my opinion. Pardon my French. But listen, you played with Kirby, right? You understand what Kirby's about. I know you may or may not have heard it, but do you believe that Kirby really doesn't care about his players after the fact that they're gone from Georgia? What are your thoughts on that before we get started with Missouri?
Obviously, you've got a guy in Shannon Sharpe who doesn't really know the Georgia Kirby. I don't think he's actually even sat down and had a conversation with him. A lot of it may be hearsay. Player that didn't get what they wanted or felt like they were cheated. But you have that they go and run and they want to tell somebody. But if you were to ask majority of those players as a person that actually played with him, he does care about that program. He cares about he's home at Georgia. He cares about them. You look at Will Muschamp, you look at Mike, Georgia guys, they care about Georgia. Why would he then bring in us to come back and coach at Georgia if he didn't care about these players? He's also going to be look to at some point in time getting some of these guys back. Just imagine 10 years down the road if Jordan Davis was not playing in the NFL to actually come back and he has an open door policy. He's welcomed former players like me to come back to campus and watch practice and do different things. So, you got a guy like by his looks, you can say that came from the horse's mouth, but I don't give him any.
There you go. I had to ask this question. It's been irking me since the last time you were on, and obviously when it happened. So I had to hear what your thoughts were. I kind of felt like we're on the same page with that. But, listen, it's already happening, guys. It's already happening. So for those not familiar with the Brigade, guys,
I'm not.
He's just smiling real big. So if you're not familiar, guys, we have the Make One Laugh Again campaign. #1 fan club. Listen, the Brigade has made it their mantra to make Juan laugh every episode. So for those listening on podcast, if you hear Juan chuckle or anything like this, or if you're watching and you're not, you don't have an idea what's going on, now you know. Okay. So I've already let Brendan know because things can get a little bit out of hand at times with the Brigade themselves. But with that being said, Brendan, so tell us about the Mizzodcast first. All right, I know you cover Missouri football. Give us a little rundown on the Mizzodcast and just to let people know, preface this before we start diving into Missouri football.
Well, thanks for having me on, first of all. The we've been going since 2014, if not I guess we're probably one of the longest running podcasts for Mizzou football. I think a lot of people in the SEC. So I didn't know that Mizzou was in the SEC, or I didn't know that they had podcasts. The best thing they have to offer, I guess. But yeah, so we cover primarily football. That's where we focus most of our time and our energy. And it's my brother Colin and another guy Caleb, who he was former national guest, and we get local guests sometimes, and we just kind of it's we take ourselves a lot less seriously than some of the sort of the mainstream side of folks who are like love football, but also just want to be entertained.
So apparently, welcome to the Brigade, Brendan. Listen, so you're very versed in Missouri football, right? Obviously, you're from what you just told us, it screams you have some experience. But I cannot go without having to put this up on the screen for those listening. Apparently, our guest looks like a more handsome Ed Orgeron. Go Tigers! All right, go Tigers!
They go to the bayou because they run by your house.
Yeah, we clipping that, by the way. So check the socials for that. But yeah, no. So and there you go. Juan legitimately chuckled this time. All right, but enough nonsense. Straight face boys and girls. So enough nonsense. Let's go ahead and get started with understanding Missouri, right? Eli Drinkwitz, I feel like Missouri's in a situation, right? I think this is going to be Eli's third year as head coach.
Correct.
So I guess overall, before we take a dive into this season, so far, how are Missouri fans feeling about Eli and where the program is headed under his tutelage?
Yeah, so I think for Mizzou fans, our time in the SEC is basically, it was sort of the Gary Pinkel years and the post-Pinkel years. And the Gary Pinkel, remember, were pretty successful for Missouri. And since then, we have just sort of hovered around that 5-6 type of years, not really having a ton of success. Sort of the years that a lot of people, when Missouri came in, they expected 4 and 8 years, and we've been hovering around 6-6. And when off of the heels of Barry Odom as our head coach, which was not a really successful run. So it was that weird COVID year where everybody took all the results with a grain of salt. And last year was sort of a very middling team. The defense was absolutely terrible. I think people that is keeping people's excitement level up with Drinkwitz is he's been a good, came out of the gate, and he's been recruiting strong classes, far stronger than Barry, and really on par with some of Gary Pinkel's best recruiting years. But this year, we're finally seeing some of those guys that he's brought into the fold, what they will or maybe. And so it's a kind of I'm not going to say it's a make or break year for Eli Drinkwitz, but it's been a light, and now is where the rubber meets the road. And the big we don't have a number one quarterback. We've got 4 guys who are competing for that position. And so whenever he is saying what's going to happen with Missouri this year, it's very easy for them Vanderbilt, because if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a team, And so anyway, there are a lot of talented players coming in this year, but they're all untested. So if Georgia comes in with a lot of untested people, say, hey, this looks promising, untested talent, they're like, well, we don't have anybody we know, anybody we've seen, some results, and then we'll talk. So I think the fans are looking at it that way too. You look at the way the schedule lines up, and Missouri fans also could be a lot better than the SEC media did during SEC media days. But I don't think anybody would be 6-6 year. But I think there are a lot of Mizzou fans, if we won 8 games, we're headed on the right track, And so even if it's a bad year, Drinkwitz but it will do whatever happens in 2022 will go a long way to the next season, where he's got some of those guys that are coming in, highly touted big stars. If the train didn't get on the track soon, things lie.
So we have our so obviously the Brigade's starting to trickle in some questions for you, Brendan. So the first question is from Rudes. Currently, or I guess you could say the current Missouri coach's approach to the program, expectations from the Missouri fan base based on the results so far. Felt like we slightly touched that a little bit, right? Like, I feel like Missouri's kind of a hard place to win at, right? So it's going to take that right kind of coach and really the staff as a whole to get them, to where, you remember, if like the first or second year, I think it was the second year y'all were in the SEC, you snuck around and won the SEC East, so like getting back to that, right? Like, I feel like, taking on the recruiting trail, right, last year, getting Luther Burden, right? I think if anybody doesn't know much about Missouri football, I guarantee you, if you're a Georgia fan and you don't know much, I guarantee you remember that name, right? So with, getting Burden and the recruiting classes that Eli's brought in, from a recruiting standpoint, I guess I'll ask this: is what is the feelings like there, right? Are fans or yourself, are they, above average, like, in regards to positivity, or are they more negative? I guess from a recruiting standpoint, how are feelings there?
So up until this current season, where Missouri 23 has been a little bit slower, we just picked up a big wide receiver recruit out of Kansas City, Joshua Manning, which sort of has boosted enthusiasm a little bit for the upcoming season. But as you mentioned, for Eli Drinkaway, he's going to be a talent, and he's going to, even though as an incoming freshman, we're going to see you could just see in the spring game the kind of speed and the strength that there's not going to be a transition into college ball for him in a way. And the great thing about having a star wide receiver is it makes all the other wide receivers look good. From the defense, the big question mark is who's going to get him the ball. And then a name you guys may, Horn, quarterback recruit, is coming in this year. He's a freshman. I don't know how much freshman, but I think one of the reasons he's a 4-star recruit out of Georgia, actually. And I think what was able to get him was that there's a big question mark whether he would even play football or not, because he was a top 12. He's a great pitcher. He's ended up he didn't get drafted high. He's on campus now. Monday camp starts, and so I two quarterbacks who they've been around. They're sort of known commodities, but not stars. We've got a guy named Jack Abraham coming out of, he was at S. I think he's 46 years old. He's played on like 7 different programs, but he's got experience. Horn, who I think has the highest upside, but when he's going to be, when he's actually going to be ready to go, nobody knows just yet. So, who's going to get Luther Burden the ball is the big question mark, because of those big names that are coming in at a level that the weird thing with DC is that you look at, it's like, oh, we got the number 35 recruiting class in the country, but you're DC, what I mean? It's like, how does that happen? How can you have, 100 programs, but the SEC's recruiting is so strong that you're still near the bottom? And so
looking at that though, Brendan, I really want to go on your point. Or well, go ahead, Juan. Go ahead.
I'm going to say that you do have a great quarterback coming in from Georgia, so he played. So we know very much about him, and he was also throwing passes to Travis Hunter, a name that's doing a lot of great things at Jackson State. So when you're talking about a guy who's going to be poised to your top receiver, he's going to be that guy. So it'll be interesting to see how well he does it up the playbook. And again, like you said, he's got baseball too, so he's on a twofold on what he wanted to do. Hopefully, he's going to have a huge focus when it actually comes to get in there and make an impact right away.
To your point, Brendan, as well, I think, what people need to understand is this, and this is outside of the SEC, right? You mentioned like in the 30s or, right outside, top 25 and things like that. People outside of the SEC do not understand that a top 25 class, if you're 25th, like just hypothetically speaking, you're almost dead last in the SEC. Like this past season alone, like in the top 25, I'm going to say 13 schools or 12 or 13 schools. Yeah, it was 12. It was 12. Excuse me. 12 schools finished inside the top 24, for that matter, with the 12th one being 24th overall. I don't think people understand just how hard it is to recruit in the SEC, and really, if you're trying to get to that level where you play the the West in Atlanta, you have to finish top 5. Like that's the level where we are as a conference, right? Top 35 nationally is still not bad, but when it comes to your conference, you're almost dead last, and that just makes it extremely difficult just based off of the conference situation. So, listen, like 35th for Missouri is actually it's pretty good in my opinion, right? There's some good players that y'all picked up. It's just when you fall in the SEC, it's difficult to overcome that.
Well, and I think when you're talking about
where's
like
most
top
of
two,
your recruits coming out of? I mean, where are you getting most of your? I mean, is it getting a lot of South talent, Texas, Georgia, Florida? Are you getting some from where are you guys getting most of your players?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Drinkwitz has been doing a really good talent. The thing about Missouri, people don't necessarily think of Missouri as a recruiting hotbed, but we do have St. Louis and Kansas City. The problem with that is that they get picked off by other schools. I mean, for years, they're actually good at football. They sucked up everybody out of the Kansas City area. And Louis, they kind of go, Ohio State would pick them off. Alabama would pick them off. A really good job of keeping in-state guys in-house. Missouri has always had a Texas pipeline, getting guys out of Texas. Chase Daniel, one of our best quarterbacks we ever had, was a Texas guy. Even through Barry Odom and now Eli Drinkwitz, we still get Tech. There's just so many players in Tech. It was a real transition for Missouri because a lot of times, we weren't recruiting the Deep South or from the Deep South. They'd come up, try recruiting guys in January in Missouri. It's tough. It's cold. And but the transition, I think, is in no small part to the SEC network, even if Missouri's not highly regarded with a lot of SEC fans now, or they know about them because they're on the SEC network. And I think the Drinkwitz has been real strategic about this, that on the cusp of being real star talents, maybe they're not in high school like some 5-star recruits are, but they like to see that SEC logo on the side of it, and you can play against, Floridas and Georgias and just having that SEC patch on the uniform has been beneficial. And I think the real difference with the team and maybe a 25 or 35 team is really comes down to how many 5-star recruits. Those top 5 programs are just loaded with 5-star talent, guys that are going to make impacts right away. Especially during the Pinkel years, they would develop talent, and what it meant was you're going to have down years. You're going to be talented but really raw, and they got passed over by the bigger programs because they get so many talented for guys to develop. They will let a guy develop, and you'll see a guy as a junior year really come that with a defender named Martez Manuel this year. He's listed as a safety, but he plays at linebacker. He also blitzes. So I mean, whether you're talking about pass rush, whether you're talking about runs, or whether you're talking about secondary, Manuel's going to be there, and he maybe.
I think we may have some technical issues. Brandon, you're back. Looks like. Yep, I can hear you, buddy. Sorry about that. We might have some technical difficulties there with connection, so pardon us for that. Listen, I think excuse me, looking at like Luther Burden, right, as an example, and you talk about the recruiting, the Missouri area, Kansas City area, like that right there. Keeping him at home was a phenomenal get for Missouri, right? Like I'm just interested to see how he transitions in as a freshman this year, like things like that. So what I want to do now is kind of transition into the schedule, right? Let's break. So what we'll do is so I'll pull up the graphic here. So we'll go the left side and then we'll go right side here. So we'll start with the first six games. You open up. It seems like you open up at Middle Tennessee State, and then you go to Kansas State as well, and then Abilene Christian comes to town, and then you look at a gauntlet after those three games. You go to Auburn. Georgia goes to Como, and then you go to the Swamp. In a 3 week span, that is like very daunting, right, for about anybody. So looking at this part right here, right, I think from a broad standpoint, I can see Missouri going 2-4, um, and honestly, it wouldn't even be that bad, right? Maybe even 3-3, because let's just be honest, fuck Auburn for what they stand for. I do not like Auburn, so I realistically, I'm thinking 2-4 here, because going to Jordan Hare, whatever they call it, that is a difficult place to play. But looking at this first half of the on the schedule here, Brendan, what do you see? What are your expectations for this first half of the season? Juan as well. Let's break it down.
No, I think you're exactly right. I think from a Missouri standpoint, it is a front-loaded schedule for us. The second game of the year, Kansas State, that's an interesting matchup for Missouri because, it's an old Big 12 rival, and Missouri owned Kansas State back in the day. I mean, Kansas State, everybody looks at Missouri and thinks that they're a bottom feeder, but then you go back and you go on Wikipedia and you look at some of the records, and not nearly as bad as people seem to think that they have been. Missouri dominated Kansas State. I think we had 60 wins to like 33 wins over Kansas State. And don't get me wrong, Kansas State is returning a lot of talent. It will be a tough road game, but I have a lot of confidence that Missouri can pull off a win there. And if they do, I think that'll go a long way towards building some confidence, like you said, going into a really tough gauntlet of early SEC games. I think for surely there's no Missouri fan realistically expects any chance of a win at Georgia. And like you said, Auburn's a tough place to play at, but Auburn's been in a state of disarray. I mean, they were trying to run Brian Harsin out of town last year for basically no reason, it seemed like to me. And Missouri has always done best when they have absolutely no expectations, and people do overlook Missouri a lot of times because they're not Vanderbilt. They had a ton of success of late, but we do get high caliber talent in here, and we'll sneak up and bite somebody, and that happens all across the SEC. Teams win that aren't expected to win, and so I don't think Missouri's going to win that game. But if they were going to have an upset this year, I think that's one to look at. The Florida game, I expect Missouri to lose that as well, like you say. But again, if you look back at Missouri's record against Florida, you see that Missouri's not afraid to go to the Swamp. I mean, we've had some big wins against Florida. I mean, I don't know. I think we have a winning record against Florida in the 10 years we've been in the conference now.
It was 5-5.
Okay, yeah. So going into last year, we had a winning record. But if you'd ask the Florida Gators, they ought to be 9-1. You know what I mean? And
we actually just had them on.
Yeah.
And we're not going to talk much about Florida. Obviously, we want to focus on Missouri. But listen, they're going through a first-year head coach, and that's a difficult transition. So I'm sorry to cut you off, Brendan, on that, but I'll let you continue. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say we see them going 3-3. I'll give them that Auburn game. Just like Rube, Auburn is in shambles right now. The only thing they have is Tanks Bigsby, and that's it. Have an established quarterback. They're going, have a quarterback merry-go-round there, and like I said, their only hope is going to be their defense. So I think Missouri can actually go and win.
Yeah, so I mean, so Juan, with your prediction, as we pull the schedule back up for just a second, first half of these games, Juan, what is your realistic take here for Missouri football?
Winning the first game, actually, you know what? That second game, Kansas State, I think that they'll be able to win. Obviously win the third game, and then again Auburn. So in a perfect world, they'll be from. I think at least I would give them 3-3.
Yeah.
Brendan, so with you right here, from your standpoint, what's your realistic expectations for that first half?
No, I think Juan, everybody be happy with that at Missouri, because we know what we're going to who we have to play every year in the SEC. And if we could come out of that 3-3, there's a lot of games that we could pick off on the back half of that schedule to get us bowl eligible. And I think that's really Missouri's goal this year, is to get to bowl eligibility and look good in a bowl game. So to do that, you almost have to get to 3-3 in the early half of the season. So I think we'd all be pleased with that, especially with the young talent we have that's untested.
Yeah, no doubt. So what we'll do here, we'll pull it back up and we'll go over to the second half, right? So I'm at 2-4. Juan, you said you were, I think, at 3-3.
3-3, yeah.
And then Brendan, I think you're mentioning 3-3 as well.
Optimistically,
fair enough. All right, so on this back half here, you go Vanderbilt, right, and that's a home game.
Yeah.
Right, and then you go to Willie B. You go to play South Carolina, at Williams-Brice, and then you host Kentucky, go to Tennessee, and then you have, I think that's the Aggies, not Texas A&M, and then
Mexico State. I think it's New Mexico State.
Yes, exactly. New Mexico State. And then you host Arkansas to end the season. My thoughts on this, looking at the last 4 games, you have a winnable game in between a true gauntlet of teams. And not saying in a bad way, but listen, Kentucky's a physical team. Tennessee's a high-powered, potent offense. They're going to be a dangerous, if you know what I mean. And then you look at Arkansas, which is just going to be a super physical team as well. That back half is rough. It really is rough, So when it comes down to that, I think for me, I think it's a matter of trying to stay healthy and just trying to pull off an upset, perhaps, right? When you pull it up, I think Vanderbilt. Listen, I don't see Vanderbilt winning a game, unfortunately, like in the SEC. Like I just don't see it, right? So then, obviously South Carolina, that's going to be an interesting game with us, with Shane Beamer in his second year, and and then Kentucky, like I said. So this back half for me, I've got another 2-4 here. And I think it's more realistically a harsher 2-4. Because, while you expect Georgia and Florida to have, to be what it is, like Tennessee and Kentucky followed by Tennessee, it's a real tough one, because, you're taking a super physical team, that can beat you down, right, if you're not careful. And then you have to go play one of the fastest teams in the country, right, from an offensive standpoint. So I've got 2-4 in this back half, finishing 4-8 realistically. Brendan, I'll let you go here first. Explain to us what's going on in this back half of the season for you, where you stand with that.
Sure. And then so this back half of the season, I think this is where Missouri fans and the national media really start to differ. South Carolina and Kentucky games in particular, because I understand the hype around Shane Beamer, and they got their quarterback transfer from Oklahoma, and there's a lot of optimism. But I mean, I'm looking at this South Carolina team, and I think that they're on the right track, but they haven't proven anything yet either. I mean, that people are hyping them, especially in regards to where they are versus Missouri. But in reality, they haven't done anything more than Missouri has yet. So I think if there is a game to pick off, that is one where I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Missouri and South Carolina, they've kind of butted heads a lot, and Missouri's come out ahead a lot. And then when it comes to the Kentucky game, I have all the respect in the world for what Mark Stoops has done and the teams he's put together. But, even the years that they've been at their best, Missouri's given, we lost last year and it was a close game, and we should have really won it. And I don't know. I understand when people are saying, well, looking at Missouri's schedule, how they're going to go 4-8. I get it. I do. But I also think that I think that if all goes well, and there's no guarantee that it will, Missouri is going to surprise a couple of teams. And if all you have to do is surprise 2 teams, and you're going to come out, with 6 wins and some bowl eligibility. Tennessee, we got absolutely embarrassed by Tennessee last year. That was a horrible game. And a big part of that is that we had a disastrous defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes. And I think Steve Wilkes is a good coach and good coordinator, but he's an NFL guy, and he had a lot of trouble adapting to the college game. And by the 8th, 9th game of the season, the defense started to turn around. But we had an absolutely horrible defense last year, and the worst part of it was our run defense. And you don't want to be a bad run defensive team against a Kentucky. And so we got Blake Baker as our new defensive coordinator. Now this is Eli Drinkwitz's 3rd defensive coordinator in 3 years, which isn't a good look. But this guy, everybody says he's an up-and-comer. He's been at the college level for a long time. I fully expect Missouri's defense to be a lot better this year. We're returning, I think, close to 80% of our team on the defensive side of the ball. So I get it. I get the 4-8 talk, but I just think there's going to be a few surprises. And for Missouri, when it's July, they're always 4-8 when you talk to the media. Missouri's 4-8 every year, including the years we win the SEC East. You know what I mean? So forgive me if I take predictions with a grain of salt in July, because I don't think we've been 4-8 ever since we've been in the SEC, but we've been predicted to be 4-8 every year.
That's why it's talking season, right?
Right.
It's exactly why it's talking season. Listen, so Juan, I'll let you go ahead and actually, before I move on, what are your thoughts on that back half?
On that back half, I mean, realistically, I would say 2 and but again, if they're going to be bowl eligible, I see that South Carolina game that they're going to, surprise them and come out and be playing on all cylinders, and that's bowl eligible for that. Kentucky is tough, with they got with Jefferson and so those are just going to be some tough games. Tennessee, that's going to be tough. So it'll be.
All right. So, I mean, from a scheduling standpoint, though, I'm looking at it in this way: Missouri has a tough ass schedule, and it's spread out. It's completely spread out. So, sounds like we got some audio feedback. It sounds like.
Yeah, I just muted mine. I think it's me.
Oh, it's okay. Okay, well, we figured it out. Fearlessly.
What did you say?
I said, well, we figured it out. But no, so apparently we're about to get Juan. Oh boy. Is this a stunner? Or is Ruge referring to a stunner here? Just say it. But no, in all seriousness though, right? Missouri's schedule is spread throughout with difficult teams and stretches of difficult teams, right? It's not like you have a murderer's row, right? It would be different if you had Auburn, Georgia, Florida, and then right Tennessee, Kentucky, and 5 back. That's rough. So you have a couple games to kind of regroup, but then you know what I mean? It's one of those things where you're regrouping and then just going through a gauntlet again. I'm not saying that Missouri can't do things, because let's be honest, like I said, 5-5 against Florida the past 10 years, that speaks volumes to me, right? Because you genuinely don't know how to pick it. You just don't. Yes, sir. Apparently, our audio feedback was Juan was actually feeding the dog Doritos. We have theories, explanations, and answers from the Brigade today, boys and girls. That's all I can say. Um, but moving forward though, right? I think I think Georgia is way superiorly overmatched here. Overmatched, or Missouri is overmatched from a talent standpoint. But what would it take Missouri to feel as if they had kind of, what could be something you could take away against, right? Since this is a Georgia podcast, when you play Georgia, what is something that you could expect to see, like that would make you and Missouri fans feel okay with the outcome of the game? Is it, you know, I think I might know some things, but I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
He's muted.
Yeah, it sounds like Brendan is muted. He might. Juan, while we figure out this right here, what are your thoughts on what do you think could be a good takeaway um, for Missouri fans playing Georgia?
You just hope that you're coming out of that game injury free, and that's going to be a beatdown. It's going to be an absolute beatdown. But it's also an opportunity, and it's great because it's an early game. Game that's earlier in the year. If they, from the physicality and the talent that Georgia has, and then just take that into those games, South Carolina, Kentucky, then that's something that they can actually,
I just don't know. I really don't. I think you mentioned it, Juan. Being injury or trying to come out as less banged up as possible, right? The least is going to be key there, right? I think what you can look at is to see how you move the ball offensively. I think if you're able to find any kind of success, against our defense, I would expect that to be something you could take away from. Can and from a Georgia perspective, I feel like our offense is going to be very explosive this year. Can you limit Georgia offensively to some degree? What degree can you limit Georgia's offense? If you can do that, that's a big takeaway moving forward for Missouri. If you have any somewhat level of success doing that, I genuinely believe there's some things to take away from that. I really do. Brendan, are you there? Let's see if Brendan is back. Welcome to technology, folks, in the 21st century. Still seems to be muted. Welcome to technology, as always. Listen, so we'll let Brendan try to figure this thing out here. I cannot hear you. So maybe we might have to bring you back on and see what happens. Just a second. Um, with that being said, though, Juan, if you had to, we'll do a ranking, right, if you will, right? Where do you think they finish in the East? I mean, in regards to in that, if you will, what standing? Where do you see them fitting in?
Oh, they'll be 6 with Vanderbilt being 7. I mean, they're not going to be better than Florida. They're not going to be better than Tennessee. Kentucky, not Georgia. So and South Carolina. Perfect situation. They would just want to make sure that they finish above Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt
No doubt.
game's going to be a battle for last place.
Yeah. So apparently, we have explanations from the Brigade here. So first off, want to apologize for the technical issues. It has to be Third and Ringo Wi-Fi. It just has to be, or it has to be that Georgia Wi-Fi, just Stonewall, right? Just a Stonewall. We're going to shout out KTG here as well. We're going to request that all guests get KTG's Wi-Fi. Apparently, it is elite, right? It is elite. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah. So we're going to see if Brendan can make it back on. listen, while we wait, right? That might be our wrap for Missouri. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. Oh my God.
Joel
Juan
said she
just
sent $10. She sent $10 for better internet.
all right. So if she's the accountant, she's supposed to be paying the bills, right?
Yeah.
Did you pay the
I don't
internet?
think she did, because I'm still over here.
Trying to figure this out, but in the meantime, right? So let's do this, right? Obviously, listen. Definitely, if we're not able to get Brendan back on, listen. If you're interested in listening, or if you're a Missouri fan and you've never heard of the Mizzodcast, give them a shout out. Listen, great podcast to listen to. I've actually listened to a couple episodes. I enjoy it, even if I'm a Georgia fan. I try to do that. I enjoy it. So go follow them on Twitter. It's at Mizzodcast. 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 Um, like I said, I enjoy the content. Just saying. So apparently Joel did pay the Wi-Fi bill. So there may be a service outage. Therefore, call them. All right. Yes. Call Great Value. Call Great Value and tell them to fix the Wi-Fi. Now, customer service subpar. Apparently, we demand Dorito free podcast. Tell Sparky to calm down. Tell Sparky to calm down over there. So listen, while we're sitting here, obviously we've talked about Missouri. Let's kind of transition a little bit here, Juan, to maybe a impromptu Q&A, if you will. Brigade, feel free to drop questions, whatever, random comments, whatever the case may be. Drop them in the comments, and we will answer your questions. In the meantime, I'll start with a topic here, and it's a big recruiting weekend this weekend. Just going to leave that there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. So it's so funny. I was morning. We played basketball on Friday mornings, and they were already talking about KJ Bolden going to Georgia this weekend. And the other thing we were discussing is lose Caleb Downs, but it's fine losing Caleb Downs if we can get KJ Bolden. Anytime you see him, he's got his Georgia paraphernalia on. So go to Georgia this weekend is going to be pretty big, and I think that they're going to pour it on.
The 633 asks you, what's your 40 top?
Man, if I could get you a 4.8, I'd about a 4. I could run about a 4.7 right now. I could run about a 5, somewhere around there.
I was about to say you said 4.7. I was like, hold on.
Yeah,
Balls.
about a 4.7, 4.7. But my middle son, who's he's at Georgia, right? I'm sorry, at Stanford right now, and he runs about a 4.5, and I was right behind him, so not too far behind him. So that
you have somebody questioning your 40 top, sir.
Y'all really doing it today. Really doing it.
Well, there you go. I don't even want to fathom what my 40 time would be, Juan. I really don't. I don't want to know. 5 flats, and I'm not talking about the time. I'm talking about wings. Like running to go get some chicken wings. I see. No, but Juan, though, I guess the Brigade was excited to get you back, man. It's been a hot minute.
Always glad to be here.
Yeah, and listen, I guess now's probably a good time. Let's go ahead and get our Friday started, right? Let's wrap this thing up. Let's see what happens this weekend at the cookout.
Yep.
Come back Monday and recap it a little bit, maybe. What do y'all think?
Yes, sir. I think that's going to be a great one. I'm not going to be able to smash the beer cans against. I'll try to say that for Monday.
What? I hope somebody got that reference, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Rude actually is the wanted me to do it, and then do the hashtag Stone Cold.
I'm just saying. Oh boy. But with that being said, just a reminder, folks, go check out Alumni Hall. 10 minutes from campus. Get you something black for the Black Out the Bins campaign, right, from our friends over at the Spike Squad. See, as you can see here, check it out. Get you something black to wear, right? September 3rd from Alumni Hall. It's that simple. Alumnihall.com. Go give them a check out and let them know we sent you, by the way. Juan, any parting words before we wrap this thing up?
I just got to get more mature and not be able to laugh. I want just one time. You do a great job, Robert. Me, on the other hand, it's better.
I have tips of the trade, but I'm not going to break them out for anybody, just anybody, I guess.
Yeah. And other than that, too, just looking for a great weekend. The Georgia recruiting thing. So, some big be happening for us.
I mean, people believe in you, Juan. I'm just like, do it for the people. That's all I'm going to say.
Patrick is being facetious.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, guys. With that being said, we're going to wrap this thing up. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you back Monday. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.